Hey everyone, my name's Darren, and in today's video we're going to take a look at a broader approach of how to improve our aim in first-person shooters. And specifically we're going to have a look at two methods that are often overlooked of how we can improve our aim. And the reason I'm making this video is because I've seen a mountain of videos on YouTube of how we can improve our aim in first-person shooters, and essentially they're all saying something very similar, and that's how do I set up my Kovacs, what aim maps do I use, how long do I play deathmatch for, and what settings do I use. And now I think that these videos are very important and have helped a lot of people get better at aiming, but essentially what I think it's done is we've skipped some really important steps in how we address the game as a whole, and so I think we've overlooked a few things, and hopefully we can address that in this video. Now, for the context of this video, I just want to give you the definition of what I mean by aim. And that's just simply the ability to consistently place the crosshair where you want, and that's it. Now, it concerns me a little bit when I see people practicing the same thing, and that's because everyone learns differently, and particularly we're all at a different point of understanding the game that we're playing, and so practicing the same thing doesn't really make sense because it's probably not right for your level of the game. And now the key is to then work out what is actually valuable for us to practice. So essentially what I want is for people to train smarter and not longer. I want us to be really efficient with the time that we spend training so that we get more out of it for our own personal game. And so I want to lead into the first method with a question, and that is, why do we practice aim? And I think we practice aim because we think if we're better at aiming, we can get more kills, and if we can get more kills, we can get more wins. And that seems like something pretty logical, but I think we've uncovered the real question here, and that is, how do I get more wins, or what do I need to do to impact the win the most? And now we need to ask, is aim actually what impacts our wins the most? And the crazy thing here is, if we break down the game into core components, which is what the first method is, to break the game down into what we think the core components of it are that influence the win, where does aim fit within that? And do these other skills actually impact our performance on aim? So I just wanted to start with an in-game example, and what I've got here is CSGO loaded up, and I've just got the Dust 2 B bomb site. And what I'm going to compare are two scenarios of defending the B bomb site with enemies coming from the tunnel. One is from playing out in the open, and one is from playing in from behind cover. Now, to play out in the open position here, you're going to have a substantially better aim skill than the people coming out of the tunnel in order to make this position work. Whereas if we compare it to playing in behind cover here, we've got a lot more margin for error, and we've got a lot more ability to utilize other components of the game, such as movement and positioning, in order to give ourselves some advantages to win the duels here. Now, you can see the problem already, and that is that we make the mistake of criticizing aim a lot when there are other parts of the game that we can look at. So we could lose duels multiple times from out in the open here and think that aim is the problem, but really I think that there are other components that we can leverage to make the aim even better. So even if our aim skill is the same from playing out in the open to playing in behind cover here, all of a sudden we're able to be a hell of a lot more effective, and that is not because our aim got better, but more because we're able to leverage other components. So I'll load up another example to help illustrate this point. We wanted to learn two things from that CSGO example. One was, what are the other components that can influence our win aside from aim? And do those components actually correlate to aim and impact our ability to use our existing aim skill? Now, what I've done here is I've created a really simple MMO statistics screen, and I use this to help visualize this first method that I spoke about, which is identifying core components of the game that we're playing that can help us influence the win. So this is just my example. I've just picked 6 things. I encourage you to create your own and find out your own and define what you think influences the win more. You might find that there are more, maybe you find that there are less. But what I have here is aim, movement, positioning, strategy, utility use, and prediction. And I've scored all of these out of 100. Now, you should keep in mind that this is just, an idea of an average how we perform over a set of games, because we over and underperform each game, and so we don't actually have this much consistency, but it's just to help with the visualization. So the first person that we're going to look at here is, say, the average type player, the person that's followed a lot of the videos on YouTube. They do a lot of deathmatch and aim practice, and so their aim skill's quite good, but they've not thought about using other components within the game. And so while they have great aim, they don't have great prediction and they don't have great positioning. So what happens if they can't predict? Well, maybe they get shot in the back. And so what is the point of having a great aim skill of 70%? You can't use it if you don't know that someone's about to come up behind you. The other one is utility use. What happens if you're unaware of where to look at what time and a flashbang gets thrown in and you get blind? I mean, that 70% aim skill doesn't provide a lot of use. So what we really need to do here, and what this helps us understand, is that in order to maximize the 70% aim skill, we need to balance out the other areas of the game. And so this next diagram here is how much of our aim skill are we not utilizing, are we wasting? So if we use that CSGO example where you're playing from out in the open, let's just say, for example, if both players have a 50% aim skill, the enemy in the tunnel and yourself defending it from out in the open, any aim skill past that point isn't going to benefit you. So if you have an aim skill of 70 and you only need 50 to play in that position, we're wasting 20% of our aim skill. So we can maximize that 70% aim skill by doing things like playing on site and playing behind cover. And all of a sudden, we've now uncovered skill within our aim that we weren't utilizing properly because we didn't understand that things like movement and positioning and prediction influence our ability to aim better. And so just to extend this further, this last example is of someone that is perhaps at a professional level. And this visualization can help anyone at any level understand how much time they need to spend and where they need to spend it in order to get a competitive advantage. Now we can see with this person here, they're quite proficient and they probably have a lot of years of experience because they've got a lot of high skill and they're near the ceiling for a lot of the components here. And so one thing that we need to understand is that it becomes a lot harder at this end of the distribution to obtain 1% of aim or 1% of movement, given that we are near the ceiling. And so, these percentages of like obtaining skill at this end becomes a lot harder, but it's a lot more valuable at the same time. So an extra 1% in aim is going to make a world of difference as compared to, say, if you're at 50% aim skill and you wanted to go to 51% aim. Now, the great thing about this example is there's not necessarily any right or wrong answer in areas that you want to find competitive advantage. So we could, obviously there's the most room we have here is for strategy. So maybe we need to spend a bit more time and we can get our strategy up another 5% to give us an advantage. But, it should take us a little bit less time to get our strategy up compared to, say, getting that 1% in aim. And so this is great to help us understand where we can find advantage and how much time we can expect to improve our skill in this area. Okay, so the second method that we're going to take a look at is understanding what actually happens when we aim. And we need to understand this because we need to then work out what's going wrong so we can isolate it and practice it. It doesn't help to be practicing the wrong thing. If we're practicing the wrong thing, we're essentially walking in the opposite direction to the way that we want to go. So what do I actually see when we're aiming? Well, what I see is that we have visual recognition. So we see an enemy player model and then we react. And when we react, our brain sends an electronic pulse through the central nervous system, down the arm to the hand. Our hand moves, our mouse and our settings in the computer interpret our movement into an action in the game, and then that happens. So there's a lot that happens between what we see and when we move the mouse that we don't really address. Now, I'll just quickly start with the computer settings. There's a lot of stuff already on YouTube about that, and I'm sure a lot of you have looked it up. But the one thing I will say is that Technical settings are a personal preference, and there are no perfect or right or wrong settings. The best settings are the settings that give you the best feel and are the ones that interpret your movement the way you think it should happen. If you think you should move the mouse a little bit and then the cursor should move a lot, well then you're just a player that needs high sensitivity. And so there's nothing right or wrong about that, but you just need to get an understanding of how things feel so that your settings can interpret that correctly. Moving on to the understanding of the game and visual recognition, we need to have a good understanding of what's happening in the game so that our mind can make sense of it so that it can react appropriately. If we don't take the time to understand what's happening and we don't expect that someone can be on the map at a certain time, then we get caught off guard, and when we're caught off guard, we don't react correctly. So we're not setting ourselves up to appropriately give ourselves the best chance. And so it's important to put some time into making sure we understand where people can be and at what time, and so we can predict what's about to happen. That gives ourselves the best chance for the fastest reaction. And then finally, there's obviously a biological component. We can't escape the fact that we own a human body. A lot of people have said it's gaming, and so we can afford to neglect the physical aspect, but that is very wrong. There's a lot that having good health can do to impact your performance. So as soon as I say there's a biological component, there's 4 critical fundamentals that we need to have: food, hydration, basic exercise, and sleep. We need those 4 things in order for our biological side to function at its best. Now, you don't have to do anything crazy, but the harder you want to work in each of these areas, the better the results will be. So for food, for starters, don't miss your meals. Like, we've all probably experienced it before. We miss a meal, we get a bit crankier, our body doesn't react the way we want. Sometimes you get a little bit of the jitters, and you can get a little bit of the jitters from a lack of sleep too. I'm sure we've all spent some time up late gaming before, and just things happen slowly. We just don't react properly. We don't recognize things. Our body doesn't behave the way that we want to behave, and that's just because of lack of sleep. And the same thing can happen with dehydration too. So you need to make sure you drink the appropriate amount of water every day. You need to make sure you eat all your meals on time, and you definitely need to make sure that you sleep on time. Now, for exercise, you don't have to do anything crazy. I would just suggest making sure if you're out and about for the day, if you can take the option to take stairs, take stairs. If you can jog once in an hour again, you should do that too. But exercise is a very deep tunnel. We can go a long way down that path and get a lot of benefits. And so now when we look at the biological side, what can we train? Well, we can train our central nervous system, we can train our fast twitch muscle fibers, and we can train our fine motor skills. And why do we want all these things? Because we want to react precisely and fast. Now, how do we learn about what we do here? Well, thankfully, there's been a lot of other industries that have gone a long way down this path to understanding how we should train these optimally. And we can look at things like, say, athletics. There's a lot of track and field athletics that have done a lot of research into what we should train in order to have the fast twitch muscle fibers, good CNS, and as well as fine motor skills, because we want to be able to control our muscles well. So some things you can do, say, for CNS and for fast twitch muscle fiber include plyometrics, which are explosive fast movements. You can do things like push-ups and pull-ups. You can do things like throwing and catching a ball. And that's got a double bonus too, because you get a bit of hand-eye coordination from that as well. So there's nothing drastic that you have to do in this area to get improvements. But the example I think of is if, say, you are, you're aiming at someone and you over flick them frequently. Well, are you over flicking them because is that a settings problem? Do you not have the right interpretation in your settings to accurately track that cursor? Or is it a biological issue? Is your body not actually moving the way that you think it should move? And so the reason I give you guys this whole process is so that you can take a very detailed look at what you're doing and then make sure that you're actually training the right thing. Now, I quickly missed the fine motor skills, and that's the ability to move your hand precisely and slowly, particularly with the use of the fingertips. And obviously, for the most of us, we grip the mouse with our hands. So, things like Jenga, stacking coins, shuffling cards, anything that you can think of, sewing, anything you can think of with your fingertips that involve slow and precise movement are going to help develop our fine motor skills more. Ultimately what we want is we want to be able to control our muscles faster and more precisely. Just in summary, the two methods I'd like you guys to work on is, one, I want you to identify key components of the game that influence the win, but also correlate to aim, so that we can make use of the aim skill that we have to its fullest. And the second thing is to take a very wholesome, wide look at what's actually happening when we aim and when we play, particularly with our body, so that we can accurately isolate and train the right things, and we're not training things that are not going to benefit us. So thanks a lot for watching the video, really appreciate it. I'm really excited to share more about what's going to happen with osmosis, but essentially we'd love to create a community of people that are going to tackle some of the really difficult questions and get lost in the weeds a little bit and see if we can find ways to improve people's skill development to the highest level. So I'm excited to share more, and there'll be more in future. But thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate it, guys. Cheers.